The event, organised by the European Energy Centre and Centro Studi Galileo with the United Nations, took place on the 21st of January at Edinburgh Heriot-Watt University.
Ladies and gentlemen, as Director of the European Energy Centre, EEC, I'd like to thank you all for participating to the 14th European Conference on the latest technology in renewable energy applications in heating and cooling. As you know, the European Energy Centre, with Centro Studi Galileo, have been promoting best practice in renewable energy through the 300 training courses we run annually at our conferences on green technologies. We have created a workforce expert in renewable energy sector. Over the past decade, we have successfully promoted the Green New Deal throughout Europe and the rest of the world. For example, about a year ago, I was in Pune, in Maharashtra, in India, promoting the Green New Deal with Terre Policy Center to help the local populations of India adopt renewable energy technologies. The Green New Deal also had a very positive impact on the Italian economy, with major companies becoming more aware of the need to reduce their carbon footprint and invest in green technologies. So we're very proud of what we have achieved so far. And today, at the 14th European Conference on Renewable Energy, together with the United Nations Environment Programme and the Intergovernmental International Institute of Refrigeration, we are promoting the Green New Deal in Scotland. After 36 years with Centro Studi Galileo of supporting renewable energy technology through our training courses and international conferences, today we are very proud to showcase the very latest renewable energy technologies available in the world today, with the aim of introducing these to a wider audience.
Nice to be in Scotland, which, as Professor Chapman just now said, is not only the country of rugged mountains and green valleys and deep blue lakes, but also the country of innovation and a country which represents a struggle for independent identity. And also it represents what is called as a creativity and looking ahead and being a visionary, being ahead of others in terms of technology and trends. And that's what I would really like to congratulate European Energy Institute, European Energy Centre, as well as Heriot-Watt to bring this composition together to set the scene for this today's interaction. European Energy Centre, with whom United Nations Environment Programme is dealing with for a number of years now, has been doing a very valuable work in field of, in the past, refrigeration and air conditioning, the new refrigerants which are not ozone depleting, new refrigerants which are climate friendly, and now they are entering into the renewable energy field, which seems to be a logical consequence. And we are now at the tipping point of renewable energy. Let me give you some of the figures, what we mean by the tipping point, because many of you may be thinking that it is a fashion to talk about tipping points all the time. We have, from 2004 to 2009, the investment in renewable energy has grown 7 to 8 times. And remember, we are traversing through the financial crisis. During the financial crisis, renewable energy investment jumped. It almost bypassed the financial crisis. There was a very small dip, but that dip was so insignificant in 2008 that nobody could stop the renewable energy investments today. The investments in renewable energy are ahead of the government policies. This is what example I would like to give in India, where the IT sector revolution started. The investment in the IT sector just surpassed the government policies. It didn't wait for the government to set up policies. The policies followed the investment, and this is what exactly is going to find in renewable energy sector. We have also the figures, which in terms of financing through the asset managements, through the development banks, because when commercial banks started getting into the credit crisis, is the development banks which stepped in. And also the asset finance increased 22 times in renewable energy, up to about $100 billion. Today, the total investment in renewable energy is about $150 billion. This is a figure in 2009, 2010, which is much higher than a new investment made in a fossil fuels. And this is what I call as a tipping point. We have millions of new job opportunities are being created in renewable energy. And we also have seen that the new opportunities in renewable energy for the employment have surpassed the new employment in fossil fuel industry. And this is the tipping point I'm talking about. And this is the right occasion to come over here in Edinburgh with the help of innovators like Heriot and Watt University and the innovators, the industries, where the Scotland industries are so proactive in setting up the renewable energy targets, and with European Energy Centre, which is trying to find that in this tipping point, are we going to roll smoothly or we are going to fall from the cliff? And there are dangers. The dangers are when investments run ahead of policies, what lags behind are not only policies, but human resource development. Again, taking the examples of India, the IT sector revolution in India missed, to a certain extent, human resource development. There are not enough engineers to support the innovation in IT industry. And that's why probably the bypass was found through the outsourcing. The outsourcing is not the Indian habit. Outsourcing is the need which is arose because of the gaps found in advancing the investments in IT sector. And that gap was a human resource development. There are no adequate engineers to support the innovations in making the software. And we may have the similar position here in renewable energy. And today's conference, if at all we can look at not only the prospects, not only jumps in investments, not only what are the kind of policies which are needed or are in place in many countries. And there are many countries, though I'm stating the policies are lagging behind, there are about 87 countries in the world out of 196 who have some way or the other renewable energy policies integrated into their national development agenda. So we are not here only to talk about what more policies are needed, but also we are going to talk about certain gaps which exist so that this tipping point concludes to a logical result. And one of the gaps is definitely human resource development, on which the training programs which Paolo Bioni talked about are so important, not only in the developed countries, but also in the developing countries, where the renewable energy, particularly in the rural area and in the agricultural sector, we have a lack of human resources, technicians to install, operate, and maintain the renewable energy. I would like to end by saying thank you to the Heriot Watt. And I met Professor Chapman a few months back proposing this particular conference. And I saw his proactive nature of making sure that the India, Italy, and Scotland, and many other countries come together. You know, this combination of Scotland, India, and Italy seems to be a bit heterogeneous for this conference. But I see there is some logic in it. India knows how to manage the heat, not only through the air conditioners, but by many other ways. And I believe Scotland knows how to manage the cold. And Italy, I think they blow hot and blow cold in number of fields. And so we have expertise to share.
Energy will remain a key issue in the future for two reasons. First, because of global warming, we will need to dramatically reduce our CO2 emissions. CO2 is the main source of global warming. And secondly, because of its price. Energy sources will be more and more costly. I don't think that we will have a shortage in energy sources. You have every time new discoveries of shale gases, for instance, but the price of its energy will become more and more costly, and there is a place for renewable energies which are, generally speaking, more costly than the current energies because of that. And heating and cooling of buildings is one of the main uses of energy, because direct or indirect emissions and via electricity consumption. For instance, refrigeration, including air conditioning, represents about 15% of the worldwide electricity consumption. In some countries, about more than 20%. And thus, we need first new technologies, and it is the subject of the first sessions. We need also new regulations, and it is the subject of the second session. And I would like to insist on the links between technologies and regulations. I mean, we will have, when you develop new regulations, you can develop new technologies. And new technologies influence new regulations. And thus, of course, it is very important to make the link between those. And for renewable energies, of course, it is a very important issue. And more generally, we need new policies at the local level, national level, European level. Well, now, I will start the first session because we don't have apparently a break. Then I will start the first session. Well, first, the goals are, first, the future of the Rio Convention and the Kyoto Protocol. CO2 is the main greenhouse gas, about 2/3, and current international discussions focus on it. Of course, we have other sources, other greenhouse gases, and of course, we know it in the refrigeration sector because, for instance, HFCs, but also the former ones, CFCs, HCFCs, are also greenhouse gases. And, but current discussions in the various United Nations conferences on climate change are focused on CO2. And the first goal, as you certainly know, is the maximum global warming at plus 2 degrees Celsius in 2050, which is very challenging. I mean, it is not. We will also have certainly to adapt to higher temperatures, and the consequences is first the fact that we have for developed countries to reduce at about 80% our energy consumption compared greenhouse gases emission compared to 1990 in 2050, and a stabilization in developing and emerging countries. And when you see the evolution of greenhouse gases emissions all over the world, challenging than it was at the beginning when we signed the Kyoto Protocol and the Rio Convention. Well, because we are in Europe, I will focus in Europe, what are the commitments? The European Union wants to be a model. I mean, it tries to be a leader in the various international discussions. I'm not sure it is a leader, but, well, it tries to be, and it tries to have behavior which could be a model for other countries. And I think that even if it cannot lead the various international discussions, the European Union is certainly a reference about policy. First, the first goal of the European Union is to reduce the emissions at about 20% less, or 30% if other countries make other efforts compared to 1990 levels. It is not the only country which has this goal, but it is perhaps one of the only regions of the world when we are able to do it. And because you also have a lot of announcements, but we also have to see if it is reasonable or not. Well, it is certainly, however, these goals are certainly the minimum we should have regarding the goal of less of 80% in 2050.
Here at Heriot-Watt, and it's a great pleasure to, on behalf of the rest of the staff of the university, to welcome you to this university, a university that was the first institute of mechanics started in 1821 to build the engineers for the Industrial Revolution, and now aiming or aspiring to build the engineers for the low carbon revolution that we are all working to achieve. I will start my first presentation on the issue of joined up thinking and technologies. We know that with changing climates, buildings, communities, and infrastructures, as well as system capacities, will be challenged. We know about the peak oil issue, and as oil prices at the moment are driving oil prices up through the $100 a barrel for Brent crude this week, we see that the rising prices of energy are going to challenge our society in many ways. We are part of the generation that has to decide on what sort of future we are going to build in a world where the quality of our life of our citizens is going to be extremely challenged by climate change. 50% of all the energy largely is used in buildings, and 50% of humanity now lives in cities, and cities generate over 75% of all the carbon emissions in the world. Therefore, a group of us for about a decade have really identified that the issues of cities and energy is key. We know that with energy comes development, and so energy is a fantastic resource to improve the quality of life of all. And we know that there's great inequalities in the world of how much per capita carbon people are emitting and energy people are using. Europe, China, USA, the developing world, all face huge challenges in the coming decade. And greenhouse gas emissions, many of us believe through the contraction and convergence theory, will have to eventually be tailed down to a system in which around the world, wherever you live, we emit a reasonable amount of emissions per capita. The challenge is how to achieve that. And cities themselves are taking on this challenge. Here's, for instance, London's carbon emission plans, where they're going along a contraction and convergence line and planning sensibly to reduce their emissions. Because of the power of the mayor of a city, somebody who knows the people who elect them and who are elected every 4 years, we have seen the Solar Cities movement as being a fantastic opportunity to take forward the dream of a cleaner future. The first International Solar Cities Congress was held in Daegu in South Korea. And here we can see where the dreams of technology and innovation and research, the Energy Innovative Society, and these slides I hope will go up on the website so you can actually read them in detail, can combine with the idea of citizens, the eco-cultural city, where the quality of life of every individual citizen within the city is affected by the decisions made on the energy supply choices for that city. And of course, with that comes the great dream of the post-industrial society, the revolution of new forms of business and commerce centered around these solar city dreams.
But we're talking about innovation, and I want to start with a definition. Definition comes from a man called Ernest Gundling, who wrote a very interesting book about the 3M company. Now, 3M, of course, are famous for inventing the overhead projector, Scotch tape, the post-it note, the high-vis jacket. So really they've had a lot to do with all of our innovation in whichever way we're working, whether we're in university or whether we're in business. We've been using 3M product. And what Gundling said was that innovation is a combination of new ideas with action which results in profit or gain. It's not just enough to have the ideas, you have to do something about it, and it's not just enough to do something about it, you have to get some benefit from it. Now, the benefit normally is thought of in money terms, but it's not necessarily the case. For example, an innovation which results in an improvement in quality of life or an improvement in the working environment is also a valid innovation, and we've heard about a few of these so far this morning. Gundling goes on to say that there are 3 different types of innovation, and these are known by different names by different people, but I just want to outline the 3 of them to you. What he calls Type C innovation is where you take an existing product and you modify it in response to a need expressed by the customers, by the users of the product. It can be quite an incremental thing. It doesn't normally grab the headlines or set the heather on fire, as they say around here. It's just natural progression, but nonetheless very, very important. Type B innovation is where the customers are expressing needs, but they're not necessarily being terribly clear about it. And the research people gather all that data and they start to work on the product and they make a more significant change. Type A innovation it's not correct to say the customer need is ignored. It's more accurate to say the customer need is not yet being expressed, and yet the researchers, the development team, are able to produce a product which goes beyond the expressed customer need and delivers something new. And actually the humble post-it note is a fantastic example of that. Nobody was asking for post-it notes, and when the engineers at 3M, the chemists, developed the post-it note, the bosses said, well, it's a bit of paper with some rubbish glue in the back. Nobody wants it. They had to resort to what I would call guerrilla warfare to get the idea adopted. What they did was make up pads of post-it notes and give them to the secretaries of the senior executives at 3M, and the secretaries started using them and really liked them. They found them very handy, and when they ran out, they went back to the chemists and said, give me some more of those sticky pads, they're really good. And the chemist said, well, we can't, you need to go and speak to your boss about that, and that's how they got the post-it note developed. So that's Type A innovation. A lot of what we're actually talking about today is a little bit more Type C, Type B innovation. Occasionally there's this big step forward, but actually the cumulative benefit comes a lot from the more mundane looking stuff. So it is really, really important. And that's the first piece of the jigsaw puzzle that I want to lay in front of you. The second one is what drives that innovation. And I think there are 4 things. There's technical development, new materials and new processes come along, and they make things possible that were not possible previously. One example from the refrigeration field is that carbon dioxide is becoming once again used as a refrigerant. It was used 100 years ago and it fell out of favour, principally because the operating pressures are quite high compared to the fluids which replaced it. For example, R12, the operating pressures of a CO2 system might be 5 to 10 times higher. Now that we have new alloys, new production methods, new techniques, we can deal with those pressures much more easily than was possible 80 or 90 years ago when the CFCs were first introduced. There's a big legal driver, certainly within the refrigeration industry at the moment, starting in the mid-80s as the CFCs became progressively more and more restricted, moving on to restrictions on HCFCs, and now we're concerned about possible restrictions on HFCs, on the so-called F-gases. We're already seeing F-gases being phased out of automotive air conditioning, and 2011 is the year for the European Commission to review the F-gas regulations and decide where they want to take that law to next. I can't tell you where it's going to go. I do know that in 5 years' time the landscape is likely to be quite different to the way that it is at the moment. And as innovators, we have to be worrying about the unknown as well as the known. This is like the unexpressed customer need that comes into Type C innovation. We don't know what the future law is going to bring. We can only speculate, but we need to be already planning to implement new developments that respond to that before we even know what the target is. Very difficult.
Solar electric bagpipe. This is the world's first ever solar electric bagpipe. You can get electric bagpipes that are normally powered by batteries. Mine is powered by a PV. And
Every day we see around us more floods, more heat waves, more droughts, as an indication of this rapidly changing climate. Now, that climate change is being driven because we are giving off more and more carbon dioxide and greenhouse gas emissions, mainly from our buildings that produce about 50% of all the CO2. What we have to do to reduce that is start to design new low-carbon buildings and cities. And to get a low-carbon building, you need to design the building better, you need to increase the efficiency of the machines in it, and then you need to run it as much as possible on clean, renewable energy. Well, at the moment, we're looking at the possibilities of whole countries being run solely on renewable energy. Now, Sweden, for instance, says that by the middle of the century, it will use no oil, no gas, and its entire economy will be run on clean wind, hydro, solar. So it's obviously possible. How rapidly we can do that will depend on the intelligent businesses, the intelligent academics, and the intelligent policymakers. And in this conference today, we've been hearing views from all of those three different groups, and it's looking extremely hopeful.
Renewable energy is also very used in the refrigerating area. First, we are working a lot on heat pumps. Heat pumps are a kind of refrigerating systems. It is the same kind of system. Thus, we are working on heat pumps and improving the coefficient of performance of heat pumps. We also work on solar refrigeration. Even if solar means the beginning heating, it can be also a source of refrigeration. And there are a lot of developments in also these fields in Europe, but also in other countries. I would mention South Asia, Africa, Australia, where solar has also we have a lot of that. But for heat pumps, certainly the regions of the world where there are the most important developments, both for the market and for innovation, are Europe and also Japan and Eastern Asia.
But I think that what we saw today was an enormous amount of hope for a better future. And also, look, if you think of yourselves, I mean, we have the young here who are keen to be part of the revolution itself and be part of that change. We have people who come from the hippies to the high tech. We've got the high tech going to the low tech. Here we have Professor Q, who's sort of saying that he sees the importance of the ground floor, the communities. But it's an indication of the fact that we are becoming joined up as part of this revolution across the countries, across the professions, across the, from the accountancy. Here we have Douglas here from Prentice, from the accountancies, from the lawyers, and we're all in the same room. And we're all talking to each other, and we're all still interested. So I think that if there is hope, I think we're part of it. And I think that's a great tribute. And it's been fantastic that the Paolo and Enrico and Mario Buoni of the Centro Galileo have put together such a rich, such a varied program that I think it's been a really terrific day. And our friends from all around the world, we have been very delighted to welcome to Heriot-Watt. But as a last thoughtful wrap-up, I will pass back over to Shenda, who's been such a stalwart member of the team today.
Thank you very much. I think I cannot say anything more than what Professor Roaf has said, and I cannot agree more with how you described the conclusion of it. I would like to request you to give a big hand to Biono family. I think Professor Roff said very well that it's a group who wants to take action. It's like a family. Bioni is a family. They are expanding their family to get the refrigeration and air conditioning people into their group, and now the renewable energy and energy efficiency group into it. I was very delighted to be here in this university, and it was an excellent presentation of Solar City, which was very inspiring to, which is very inspiring to see to it that small initiatives probably can spark off very great movements.
The European Energy Centre and Centro Studi Galileo with the United Nations have organised an important networking event to introduce their European meeting about the latest technologies in renewable energies. What is the European Energy Centre?
The European Energy Centre, or EEC, is an international organisation based mainly in the UK, with branches throughout Europe, India and further ahead. The European Energy Centre was established with Centro Studi Galileo about 36 years ago. We organize mainly training courses and international conferences with several organizations such as universities throughout Europe, Edinburgh Napier University, Heriot-Watt University, the major universities in Southern Europe such as University of Perugia, Polytechnic of Milan, Polytechnic of Torino, Polytechnic of Rome, CNR of Rome. Those links and networks that we have allow us to put together the major experts that work in renewable energy and have them network together, have them share the latest technologies, all these with the purpose of promoting renewable energy. We believe that promoting renewable energy is the way forward for the economy, the worldwide economy, and to overcome any crisis, any financial crisis that the world is facing today. We promote this through the Green New Deal. The Green New Deal is the United Nations philosophy that wishes to promote and tell the world about the green technologies adoption, especially companies using those green technologies to try expand their business, increase their turnover, and by doing so, obviously also doing something good for the environment.
I would like to thank Edinburgh Napier University for hosting this magnificent dinner in this very beautiful historic setting. A wonderful introduction to our 14th European Conference in Renewable Energy taking place tomorrow. As director of the Italian Centro Studi Galileo and founder of European Energy Centre, I wish to highlight that the aim of this evening important event is to give us an opportunity to build relationship and work together to create sustainable renewable energy sector in Europe and the rest of the world. Now, after running thousands of courses in Italy, I'm delighted that we are also organizing courses in UK through the European Energy Centre, in India with the Terre Police Association, in other parts of Europe. e throughout the world with associazioni dei tecnici italiani del freddo. By working together, we can build the renewable energy workforce for the UK, Italy, Europe, and the rest of the world.
The relation we have with the United Nations Environment Programme is extremely important. The European Energy Centre and Centro Studi Galileo have been promoting the Green New Deal, green technologies, for the past decade with the United Nations Environment Programme, especially through the conferences we have organized with the United Nations. Today's event, which is a conference, and tomorrow's event, which is also a conference, a major international event, which aims to promote the use of the adoption of green technologies throughout the entire sector. Those green technologies obviously help the economy and also help the environment. The United Nations in particular, obviously its aim is to promote the use of green technologies, and we just help them with this target, with this goal. About a year ago, I was actually in Pune, in Maharashtra, in India, organizing again another similar event with the United Nations to promote green technologies, and this was extremely successful, and it helped the local populations of India access electricity. Through accessing electricity, also accessing clean water, and a lot of other, obviously, day-to-day requirements and needs that we obviously, that any human being should have, really. So this relation that we have with the United Nations is just key to our organization, and the United Nations is extremely pleased with it. So we really are looking forward to a very successful future with the UN.
I think what the European Energy Centre brings to Scotland and to the United Kingdom is a lot of knowledge and the expertise in other countries. And Scotland and Edinburgh Napier University are sharing our expertise just now with the European Energy Centre. We are running seminars together using experts from Edinburgh Napier University, from the Scottish Energy Centre, which is based there, and also from our Institute of Sustainable Construction. And working with the European Energy Centre, there's a great possibility that we will make a positive impact on the new training and the new skills which all our industries need.
Edinburgh and Scotland in particular is it's a hotspot really for renewable energy. The natural resources that Scotland has, such as wind power, hydroelectric, biomass, and many other renewable energy resources, allow Scotland in general, the United Kingdom, and Edinburgh being the capital of Scotland, to have reached a certain importance in the European scenario, but also worldwide. The Scottish government, Mr. Mather, the Energy Minister of Scotland, who I met a couple of weeks ago, was extremely supportive of our initiatives. Heriot-Watt University, Napier University, all those universities that are really looking forward to today's event and tomorrow's events, because we together we obviously help promote renewable energy and green technologies. So Edinburgh is really naturally, due to the actual natural resources that are available here in this country, is naturally the perfect location for the European Energy Centre to be present, but also for those conferences with the United Nations Environment Programme to succeed.
The relation between Scotland and Europe?
In the case of Europe and Scotland, I think Scotland has a track record and a history of some very famous inventors. In fact, Joseph Black, many years ago, discovered carbon dioxide. The likes of Howden, James Howden, discovered things like pre-combustion heat, and John Napier and logarithms. And I think the history of Scotland in inventions and how we have worked with other countries in Europe has a tremendous history. And we hope for our future generations that it continues.